Dr. Walter Williams. Welcome back to WOL Radio.
Yes, Carl, I'm here.
I'm glad that you're here as well on this special day. You're going to hurt some people's feelings today.
Oh, my goodness. I want to enlighten the people today. I want to tell them the truth today.
All right, go for it.
Well, as you know, I've written two books called, one of them is called The Historical Origin of Christianity, and the thesis of that book is saying that there has never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. Never happened. Never walked this earth as a human being, just a biblical character. And the second book is called The Historical Origin of Islam. The thesis of that book is saying that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of the Prophet Muhammad of Islamic tradition. Never happened.
All right, hold that thought right there. We got to take a break for the news. When we come back, I want you to tell us who gives you more heat, the Christians or the Muslims? 800-450-7876. You can join our conversation with Dr. Walter Williams. Take your calls after this news update on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Yeah, with Carl Nelson weekdays from 6 to 10 a.m. on 1450 WOL.
And thank you for staying with us. 18 away from the top of the hour, Dr. Walter Williams has joined us. And as he mentioned, he's got two books out. And basically, he's saying that there was never a person in the form of Jesus the Christ, the Muhammad the Prophet, who walked the face on this planet at all. And he's putting up some money. If you can dispute it, the money's yours. But Dr. Williams, before the news, my question to you was, who gives you the most grief when you say this? Do you get it from the Christians or from the Muslims?
I don't get it from anyone. They don't call and attack me anymore. See, I've been out here for 40 years, Carl, and they know they have to bring information by way of using the discipline of history to repudiate what I'm saying. They can't do that because, see, a Christian is an individual who sits in the pews of a church that don't have to think. When you go into the pews of a church as a Christian, you don't have to think. You go in with your belief and faith and believing in the Bible and so forth and so on. And the same thing with a Muslim. A Muslim is a follower. They don't read that much. So therefore, when they hear me come out on the radio and in my lectures and places of where I have an audience, they don't try to attack me. Some do, but very few. When I first came out 40 years ago, yes, they heard something new that went against their belief. So they came out and tried to attack me. But since then, it really died down and diminished to a minimum.
And at one time, you put some cash on the table. Tell us about that.
Yes, I have at this very moment, Carl, as I speak, a $5,000 award to give to anybody of any race, creed, or color, including the Pope, that can repudiate me and repudiate the discipline of history when history and myself is saying that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. Now, in order to get that $5,000, you have to use the discipline of history to do that. You can't come on and try to get that $5,000 with your belief and your faith and what these Christian theology is teaching you and have taught you. You can't use that. See, in my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, I never used not one biblical references. In my books, Historical Origin of Islam, I never used not one Quran reference, none of that. I use the discipline of history. So if you can use the discipline of history and prove that a character by the name of a Jesus Christ walked this earth as a human being, you get the $5,000. Now, if you can't do it, if you know someone that can do it, then if you find that individual, you will get a $2,000 award also as a finder's fee for getting that person to do just that. So my $5,000 has been in the bank collecting interest for over 35 or more years.
And is this money still on the table for Muhammad the Prophet as well, or is it just for Jesus the Christ?
No, it's still on the table for Muhammad the Prophet. It's still on the table for any biblical character. 99 9/10 of every biblical character named in the Bible never walked the earth as a human being. So that goes for Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Sarah, Gideon, Esau, David, Solomon, and any biblical character that's listed in the Bible. That $5,000 stands for them also.
But what about the folks that Brother Quasey talks about? It says that the from Kemet that they were actually here. Were those stories as well? That they just and the Greeks just changed their names, the Greeks and the Romans?
Well, I have to hear what he's talking about before I can make a comment on it. Intelligent comment. I can't. I don't know what he said about what he said. You see, so what I'm saying, if I hear his comments, then I can comment whether I agree with it or whether I don't agree with it.
So you're saying that Jesus Christ was not born today, as they say, today being Christmas Day. You don't believe that, and you don't believe he died on the cross. You don't think that ever happened.
That see, it's not what I believe. It has nothing to do with what Walter Williams believed. The world does not care what I believe. They don't care what I believe. It's am I saying and telling the truth using the discipline of history that's based on historical research that's based on facts, that ends up in facts. Am I talking facts? Am I bringing the right information by way of facts, by way of research, by way of 40 years of research? This is what I'm going on. So it's not whether I believe it or not. It's what I've researched to prove to myself that this is the facts of my research, and the facts came out that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ, and the Prophet Muhammad, and Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Sarah, Gideon. Any of those biblical characters never walked the earth as human beings.
What does your research show you about when we die? What happens?
Well, you hear that's one of the things. It's called the mystery of life. When you go to a funeral of a person who's deceased and you look down in the casket at that deceased person, the question has to be asked, where did that deceased person's spirit go after he died? The answer to that is called the mystery of life. No human will ever know and have that answer, because you have never met an individual who you went to their funeral and died, and they came back 30 days later and say, "Hi, Carl, what's happening, man? You know, I saw you at my funeral." And he tell you about what happened to him after that. That never happened. So the question that you're asking me cannot be answered. It's called the mystery of life.
So what do you believe happens?
I don't know, Carl. I can't go by what I believe. What I believe, like I said before, it's unimportant what I believe. I don't know. That's the answer. No human can tell you what happens to a person after they die. You see, no human can tell you that. So I can't speculate, because if I speculate on that, then I will be giving you my theory. And see, my personal theory. And see, there's three things that you can do with a theory. You can believe the theory, disbelieve it, or be neutral. But see, in this case, no human on earth, no matter how much money they have, how much education they have, and what position in life they hold, they cannot tell you what happens to an individual after that individual is deceased. Can't do it. Called the mystery of life.
Is there a God?
Well, you got to understand, which God are you talking about? You see, each religion has a God. Christianity has a God, dead white man on the cross. And that invisible God supposed to be his father. Then Islam have Allah as God. Judaism has Yahweh and Jehovah as God, so forth and so on. But now, speaking of God, if you would really know and want to understand about God, is that you have to understand that God is a man. Because the preacher will tell you that God created man in his own image. So every time an individual uses the term and speak the word God, they say he, his, or him. That means that it's referring to a gender, a male gender. Okay? So now, who is God? Who created Carl Nelson? Who created Walter Williams? Your father and your mother are your creators. So therefore, Carl, your God is your father, and your mother is your goddess. They created you. You can't deny that. I can't deny that. My father and my mother had a sexual union, and out came Walter Williams. Okay, they created me.
All right,
God
hang
is
on and stay
man.
with us, and I'm going to take some calls and see if people agree with you. Dr. Walter Williams on this Open Phone Friday, 10 away from the top of the hour, 800-450-7876. Calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
The AM, Carl Nelson on 1450 WOL.
And thank you for staying with us at 6 away from the top of the hour. Let's take some calls. Walter Williams, stay with us. 800-450-7876. Let's go to line 4. Tabacootie's calling us from Atlanta. Tabacootie?
Well, good morning, Carl. And good morning to your guest, Dr. Williams.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. Dr. Williams, I just want you to respond if you could. There's a preacher by the name of Jay Edmonds, and I had asked him about what happened in Charleston, South Carolina. And I asked him, I said, where was the blessing, the healing, and the miracle? And I asked him, I said, well, and then he told me, first he said the church is not a refuge. Then I came back and I asked him, I said, in Psalms 91, they talk about their God being a refuge and I can't think of the other word now. Anyway, their God being a refuge and a protector of them. And I asked him what happened, and he didn't want to answer my question. And I don't know if you found this. There is a guy named Polkovich. He did research on like 126 historical texts that was written during the time Jesus is supposed to have existed. And, and he didn't find any. You would think that if Jesus was doing all these things, that people would have been writing about them, and there would be more. Just like we have, there are numerous books on Dr. King, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, and others that we know, and there's video. We know they didn't have video in that time period, but people were writing books. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think of that? Because each time I ask some of these people to prove to me that what they're saying is true and correct, sometimes they get angry. They get ready to fight, because now they will tell you that, like Jay Edmond, he'll call somebody else's God pagan, and he'll say small g. But yet, if somebody says something about theirs, they act as if you are supposed to respect what they believe in regardless, because they believe in it. And they fail to realize that respect is only given, when it's been given, from the opposite direction. So I'd like to know, what do you think of that? And if you have heard of those 126 scriptures that this guy researched, and he found no evidence of Jesus existing.
Okay, well, the thing about it is this. There's never been a Jesus that ever existed as a human being. So he's right on that point. There's no such thing as a Bible on planet Earth until 1475, when the first printed Bible came on planet Earth. Thirdly, I suggest to all listeners is to clear your mind and give yourself a spiritual enema by emptying out and taking out of your life anything that's connected to the Bible or religion. We don't need that in our African community anymore. We need to know the truth, okay? The truth is that our ancestors and the people living in the secular community today, all over the world, of all races, creeds, and color, has been lied to via these various religions. Now, you have to really understand what I'm saying. And one way that you can understand what I'm saying is that I wrote 2 books to explain to our African community exactly what happened to our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, after the Greeks came into Egypt. Now, I'm not trying to sell you a book. I don't make a living selling books. But I use my book, and I've written this book for the sole purpose of bringing information, new information, to our African community in America and throughout the world in order for them to be liberated. That information, if you study that information, read the book, study the book, and the things that I'm saying in the book will enhance your liberation as an individual and as a race of people. One has to realize that the symbol, the icon, and the image of white supremacy is institutionalized in all Christian churches throughout America and throughout the world. You have to understand that. Secondly, an individual, I have to ask the question to a Christian. Christians, I'm asking you this question. Do you think that the white race will take their children and their family into a church that has a big black African Jesus hanging on the wall and teach their children and their family that this is their God and Savior? Do you think that they would do that? I will give you the answer. The answer is hell no, they will not do that. Second question I asked the Christian, what is the name of your African God that looks like you? Because that dead white man on that cross does not look like you or any member of your family, nor that misguided minister that is encouraging you to believe in this lie. So that would be my answer to you at this moment.
Okay, let me ask you this. So what do you think about, now, according to what white people say they found the body of the pharaoh that they call Ramses. But I find it odd that they have never found Moses, Joshua, or all those people that were supposed to have been with Moses during the time that Ramses existed. And, there was some other information stating that there was, from an archaeological and an anthropological standpoint, that there wasn't any evidence of a mass exodus from Kemet during that time period.
Hold that thought right there, Tabakudi. We got to take a quick break for a traffic update. I'll let you finish your question for Dr. Williams. 800-450-7876. Folks, you too can join the party. Take your calls after this traffic and weather update on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Welcome to the Carl Nelson Show on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
Thank you for staying with us on this Open Forum Friday. We're going to have a special guest with us on this Open Forum Friday. His name is Dr. Walter Williams. Before we left, Brother Tabakudi in Atlanta had a question for Dr. Williams. Tabakudi?
Yeah, I just want to ask him, what did he think about that they found people, like they say they found the body, the tomb of Ramses, but they've not found any of these Christians that they say existed during that time period. At least I haven't seen any. But I watched some of this stuff, and because I do some study, and I said, that don't sound right. You study a little further, and you see that they're telling you lies over the TV. So I just want to know what you think about that, and I'll listen to you after air, and we're going to make other comments, but I'll catch you on that one on the next Friday, on the next Open Phone Call. Y'all have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Tabakudi. Dr. Williams?
Yes. Getting back to what some of the questions that Brother Tabakudi asked was this. He's speaking about Ramesses, okay? That is part of the chronology of ancient Egypt. My third book that my wife and I are producing, which will be out in the spring of this year, coming year, it's called Dispelling Myths of Ancient Egypt. And I have a warning in there to all African scholars, teachers, students. Do not use the chronology of ancient Egypt, because the chronology of ancient Egypt was created by Western academia using the Bible to do so. Our ancestors, ancient Egyptians, never wrote a chronology or a history of themselves. If so, prove it. And that's my challenge. That's my statement. Now, he also said something about the Exodus, Moses, and so forth and so on. Now, in 1999, in the Chicago Sun-Times, right here in Chicago where I live, in that newspaper, they made an announcement about the reopening of a museum on the University of Chicago campus. And in that article telling about the reopening of that museum, they had an article in there that says little known facts about Egypt. They said, even though scholars may search, there's no evidence of a Moses ever being in Egypt. That's number one. Number two, they said there's no evidence of a 10 plagues brought against Egypt. Three, they said in this article that the Exodus never occurred. Four, they said that slaves did not build the pyramid. So that dispute, that lie that comes out of the mouth of these various preachers about their own ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, having slaves, having an Exodus, 10 plagues coming against them, and Moses was put into a basket and floated down the Nile River, and the Pharaoh's daughter retrieved the basket, retrieved baby Moses out of the basket, and raised the baby Moses in the house of the Pharaoh. They said that never happened. They have no evidence of these things I just mentioned. Okay? So therefore, this Moses was supposed to be the founder of the religion called Judaism. But Moses is predicated on being put into a basket by his mother and floated down the Nile River. And the story goes on from there. So therefore, if they had no evidence of a Moses, what happened to the religion called Judaism? It falls flat on its face. It's over with. And then the Jews practice what is known every year, the Passover. That's predicated on 10 plagues being brought against Egypt, the Exodus, and slaves building the pyramid. So the Western academia is saying that they have no evidence of a 10 plagues being brought against Egypt. No Exodus ever occurred, and no slaves building the pyramid. So that makes the Passover ritual that the Jews practice every year invalid. Then you go into another section of truth. In the year 2000, a Jewish rabbi by the name of S. David Sperling wrote a book called The Original Torah. This is in the year 2000. And he said in this book, there's never been an Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Sarah, Gideon, Esau, David, Solomon, or Joshua. And Walter Williams said, don't stop there, that every biblical character named in the Bible, 99 and 9/10 of every biblical character named in the Bible never walked the earth as a human being. Now, S. David Sperling is a teacher at the Hebrew College in New York City. He said that he is compelled in this book. He said, I am compelled to read the Torah allegorically because it cannot be read historically. So the Jews are telling you that all these mythical things that you believe that's written in the Bible is not true. They're telling you that that's a lie. They're telling you that they have told you a lie. Western academia has told you a lie. So I'm out here, and I have everything I said. I have written information to back up everything that I'm saying. So that would be my answer to brother, the last caller that called.
All right, 800-450-7876, 13 after the hour. So in your research, where did this Bible originate? Where all these stories come from?
Well, the first Bible was printed on planet Earth was 1475. You got to have a printing press to print up a Bible. And Johannes Gutenberg in 1437 created a printing press with movable print. And that was during the time of the Renaissance era. Now, you got to understand that the first Christian church ever built on planet Earth was in and built in Constantinople, and Constantinople today is known as Istanbul, Turkey. That's over in northeast Africa. Okay, it was called the Church of Hagia Sophia, and in my historical origin of Islam book, my wife writes a chapter on that. What happened to the Church of Hagia Sophia? And so that was the world's first Christian church, built in 532, finished building in 537, 5 years later, instituted to be built and encouraged to be built and appointed to be built by Justinian and his wife Theodora, who was the Byzantine emperor at that time. So you have this church, the world's first Christian church, built in northeast Africa, called the Church of Hagia Sophia. And I'm giving you a short overview without going into a whole lot of long detail. But in 1439, John VIII went into Florence, Italy, at the Curia there. The word Curia means college. And he relinquished what is known in history as the donation of Constantine to have that seat of Christianity moved over into Europe. And this is back in the 15th century still. So you had, in the 15th century, you had the seat of Christianity being transferred out of northeast Africa, out of the double-walled city of Constantinople, out of the Church of Hagia Sophia into Europe. And this is and that was happening in 1439. 6 years later, in 1445, over the catacombs, on the outskirts of Rome, over the catacombs was built the Vatican. When Eugenius IV and Nicholas V dug up all those graves in the catacombs, because the Romans buried their dead in the ground. So they dug up all these dead bodies and so forth and so on, and they began to use that area on the outskirts of Rome, the suburbs of Rome, to build what is known as St. Peter's Church, 1445. Today, that church, St. Peter's Church, is known as St. Peter's Basilica. Okay? And then 30 years later, here comes the world's first printed Bible on planet Earth. That Bible consists of the first 5 books of Moses. Moses who? Not the Moses of the Bible who created that first 5 books. It was Moses Maimon, called Maimonides. He created that Bible in 1168 and finished it 12 years later in 1180. Now, this is all history. It's nothing but what Walter Williams believed. This is research history. Okay.
Right. Hold that thought right there, Dr. Williams. I got to take a quick break. There's a traffic break. When we come back, I'll take some phone calls for you. People got questions for you. 800-450-7876. You too can join the dialogue with Dr. Walter Williams. Take your calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Real Talk Radio in the AM. Carl Nelson on 1450 WOL.
And thank you for rolling with us at 20 after the hour with Dr. Walter Williams. He says there was never a man named Jesus the Christ or a man named Muhammad the Prophet that it walked the face of this earth. And before I take a call for you, Dr. Williams, you mentioned that the Bible, you're talking about the Bibles and the printing press when the printing press was made. But from what chematologists tell us, that a lot of this stuff was written in the walls in the temples in Kemet, or the hieroglyphics, or on papyruses. The forerunner of what in modern day newspaper. So how does that jive with you're saying the printing press? Obviously, this information was there before the printing press was even manufactured.
See, that's what you have been told is a lie. That never happened. None of that stuff is on the walls of ancient Egypt. None of those temples have anything pertaining to a Bible. See, our ancestors, ancient Egyptians, they didn't have no religion. They had a spiritual way of life that was with the underlying principle they used of Ma'at, truth, justice, peace, love, and wisdom. They didn't have no religion to clog their thinking. How do you think they built a pyramid? They came out of their minds that's connected to the universe, their spiritual universe, that they connect themselves to. The universe taught them how to build a pyramid 490 stories high, with our stone casings weighing over 250 tons each. How did they get them up there? And the base of the pyramid is on all 4 sides of 756 feet square. So how did they think like that? If they had a religion to clog their mind, because a religion incarcerates an individual's mind, because in order to practice a religion, your religion that you're practicing is based off of belief. And that belief that you have in these religions and the faith that you have in these religions does not give you knowledge, but it incarcerates your mind, just like an individual who is put into a prison. He's put into a jail cell that is so many feet wide and so many feet long. Okay? That's just space. That's how he lives in there. He thinks in there. He does everything in that space. So therefore, you have an incarcerated mind if you believe in these religions. Our ancestors did not have an incarcerated mind. Their mind was wide open. They were able to build the Sphinx. The body of the Sphinx is 1 city block long, 6 stories high, with the African face carved on it. They were able to bring forth civilization for all of humanity. They were the first literate people on planet Earth. Why? Because they created the world's first alphabet to make themselves literate. So I can go on and on and on. So all this stuff that they're telling you is they're trying to fit into and make the Bible, as people know it today, to be something of substance. The Bible is nothing but a lie, L-I-E. So therefore, get that junk out of your life. None of those things happen in the Bible, only if you believe, because the Bible is a book that one has to believe in.
All right, 800-450-7876. Go to line 2. Rick's calling us from Virginia. Rick?
Hey, good morning, guys. It's good to be on this day. Good morning, Dr. Williams.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Got a question. I actually have several questions. One is
One at a time.
Yes, sir. What's going on with you and Pastor Ray? Because I've been, kind of got into this through both of you, and, I just wanted to know what was going on so that I can continue with my studies.
Okay, let me answer that question. Pastor Ray deceived our community, in my opinion. This is Walter Williams talking now.
Yes, sir.
He used my material and came out on the world stage with my material without giving me credit for it. He came out there as if he found and researched this. But he got out there on the world stage trying to use my material, and when the questions came to him to be answered by him concerning the subject of religion, the Bible, etc., he could not answer them. Okay? He used our community to try to gather followers. And that's wrong. I don't want any followers following Walter Williams. You see? Because if I allow you, the human being, to follow me, I will take away your humanity. And so I don't want to take away your humanity. You are just as much as a human being as I am. And I don't want your money. He wanted your money. He tried to create African village to get a following. And all that stuff fell down, just collapsed. And he did the same thing to Crazy. He used crazy stuff to try to get over on our community. He's a fraud, okay? And that's what happened to Ray Hagins. What's your next question?
All right, you were talking about alphabet. Look, Doctor, in order to follow you, you talked about the classic Greek writers, Plato, and
I never said that about no Plato. You never heard me say anything about Plato. If you hear me say anything about a Plato, I will tell you that Plato never walked the earth as a human being.
Right. Yes, you said these writers, these people never existed. But when you're in school, they have volumes of books and writings and all this information about them. You say that the whole pantheon of folk, Greek classic writers, never existed. Now, how are we supposed to just discard all of that, sir, that information?
All right, you want me to tell you?
Yes.
You want me to tell you? Okay, now listen to this. Now, you can discard it if you want to. You can keep it if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the Greeks came into Egypt under Alexander the Greek in 332 BC, the Greeks forced the Greek language on our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, who were the only literate people on planet Earth. Okay? Literacy means that they created an alphabet. That is what makes one literate. They forced this language on our African Egyptian ancestors, and they learned that language, and they applied an alphabet to that language. Okay? So therefore, the Greeks never had an alphabet coming into ancient Egypt, but it was the Greek language an alphabet was applied to. Now, this was done in the 4th century, 332, when Alexander the Greek came in. Now, let's go back to Socrates. Socrates is before the Greeks came into Egypt, okay? And he is supposed to be the teacher of Plato. He's supposed to have been a writer and a teacher of Plato. Now, Plato is the 5th and 4th century. Socrates is the 6th and 5th century. Now, Plato is supposed to be the teacher of Aristotle, who is the 4th and the 3rd century, supposed to be the teacher of Alexander the Greek. Right. Then you have Herodotus, who supposed to have come about in the 5th century. Then you have Euripides, who wrote Greek tragedies, and Herodotus is supposed to be the father of history, and Euripides is supposed to be in the 5th century. Then you have Homer, who is supposed to be in the 9th century or the 800s. You see? So you have Solon, and you have Hippocrates in the 5th century, et cetera, et cetera. So now I'm going to wipe out all those names I just called. I ask you one question. If these names walked the earth as a human being, what alphabet did they use? Because the Greeks never had an alphabet until Alexander the Greek came into Egypt in the 4th century and forced the Greek language on our ancestors, and then, being a literate people, applied an alphabet to the Greek language.
All right, hold that thought right there, Dr. Williams. Stay with us, Rick. This is getting interesting. 29 after the hour. 800-450-7876. Open phone Friday with our special guest, Dr. Walter Williams, who calls next on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Morning show number one on everybody list. Carl Nelson on 1450 WOL.
And thank you for staying with us on a special Open Phone Friday with our very special guest, Dr. Walter Williams. Again, the number to call to speak to him is 800-450-7876. Dr. Williams, I'm going to let you finish up with your answer to Rick's question.
Well, I finished the answer. You see, if these names that I just mentioned, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Herodotus, etc., they were supposed to have existed before Alexander the Greek came into Egypt. So my question to anybody is, what alphabet did these Greek names use? Because the Greeks had no alphabet coming into Egypt. They had no institutions to have an alphabet in Greece. So therefore, as our ancestors learned the Greek language when Alexander the Greek came into Egypt and applied an alphabet to the language. The Greeks never had an alphabet, but it was the Greek language that our ancestors applied an alphabet to. And you have to realize that our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, created the world's first alphabet. So that's by making themselves the only and the first literate people on planet Earth. That's my answer.
All right, Rick?
Hey, well, I got one more question real quick. I know people are waiting. Look, it's a lot to learn from you, Dr. Williams. I appreciate you. Look, are you planning on having There's No Such Thing as Christmas sale on some of your products and CDs and tapes? Because, you know, I got to get some more of your stuff because you got me flipping pages like crazy. But I appreciate you, and maybe if you can answer that. And have a nice day, sir.
Okay, you too, sir, and thank you for the call. No, I don't have. Only thing I have is 2 books out there, and my distributors sell my books. they're selling all over the world now. So I don't know how my distributors is handling the sale of the books. I don't make a living selling books, so I don't know. That would be my answer to you. I don't have no special day not to sell the books or to sell the books. It's up to my distributor.
But if you want the books, can you get them online?
Well, you can go into Amazon.com and you can get them right there online. The Historical Origin of Christianity and the Historical Origin of Islam by Walter Williams. And they can, order it from Amazon, or either if you have an African bookstore in your city or nearby where you live, you go in there and request that book, or either go into Barnes and Nobles, and they can order it for you.
All right, 26 away from the top of the hour. Got some more people want to speak to you. 800-450-7876, the number to talk to Dr. Walter Williams. Line 6, Deborah is calling us from Columbus, Ohio. Deborah?
Yes, good morning. I wanted to ask the doctor a question before I made a comment. What was our alphabet prior to Egypt?
What was what now?
What was the African alphabet prior to Egypt?
Well, you can't. There's no other civilization prior to ancient Egypt. You see, that's the reason why they were the first people on planet Earth to create an alphabet. Okay, and there's no other prior or older civilization than ancient Egypt. Now, in my book or books, I have an alphabet chart. The alphabet that is being used today, as we speak, is the hieratic, Demotic, Coptic, Egyptian script, and I have a picture of that alphabet, those alphabets, in my book under the alphabet chart. If you get the books and you go and find where it says the alphabet chart, and you turn to that page and you go all the way to your extreme left under Egyptian, the first line is pictorial symbols called the hieroglyphs, which has never been deciphered. And then the second and third line is your hieratic Demotic script, okay, that was applied to the Greek language. And then when the Greeks came in, they applied that using that Coptic script to their language, and it's called, by way of a misnomer, the Greek alphabet. When the Romans came in 302 years later and took over from the Greeks, they forced the what is known as a Italian or Roman language onto our ancestors, and they did the same thing to that language by way of applying an alphabet to it, and that is called the Latin alphabet. And from the Latin alphabet, you get the English alphabet, the ones that we're using today. So that's a short overview on the development and the historical origin of the alphabet.
Okay. Well, I just would like to beg to differ with you on that, because we as a people, we existed as civilized people prior to Egypt, and we were great Ethiopians. And
Wait. Tell me and give me and point to me a older civilization than ancient Egypt. Ethiopia or Abyssinia, Nubia, which is Sudan today, and Egypt is all at one time part of the Nile Valley civilization. So when you speak about an Ethiopian or Nubian, you're speaking about the ancient Egyptians. They're all Africans.
Sir, if you don't mind me finishing, what I'm saying to you is that prior to Egypt, there were Ethiopians. The Ethiopians is what established Egypt. Okay? So we lived for 20 million years as a spiritual people connected to God, and we were not uncivilized. We didn't live for 20 million years and all of a sudden 6, 7, 8,000 years ago become a civilized people. So we were a great nation prior to Egypt. I mean, you can look at anthropology and see that. You have the great cities in the Sahara Desert that are buried under there that they come up with and see that these things existed. It wasn't that we just had this spiritual revelation at the time of Egypt. Who was the first to write, sir? Who was the
ancient Egyptian? Whoever created the first alphabet. The first alphabet came out of ancient Egypt.
Name.
What was that?
What is the person's name that was the first to write?
Came out of a culture, not a person. Came from a culture of people.
Somebody had to sit down and write. And so we had Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a man by the name of Enoch. Okay, the Egyptians refer to him as Dayahudi. So there was a man who, through spiritual revelation by God, an African man, a black man, who God revealed to write. So it wasn't everybody at one time. We already, you can see, we as a people, or we can't come together on one topic. So somebody had to initiate this. One person came and had to do that. There's no way you can tell me that we were uncivilized people prior to Egypt. We can look at anthropology and study and see that. We look at Dr. Chancellor's book, The Destruction of the Black Civilization, and his timeline goes prior to Egypt and us being a civilized people, and that through migration is what has caused us to have problems. So I don't understand how you can.
I tell you what, Deborah, thank you for your call, and I'm going to let Dr. Walter Williams explain, because I think what he was saying, and I think, and you sort of glossed over it, he was saying that Kemet was all of that region. It was all, at one time, that was all just one region, the Nile Valley. But you're trying to separate them now, as modern people have, and that's the basis of this question. But I'll let him explain it. 800-450-7876. Great discussion. 20 away from the top of the hour.
Your voice can now be heard.
Y'all ready?
Yeah. With Carl Nelson weekdays from 6 to 10 a.m. on 1450 WOL.
And thank you for staying with us, and our guest, Dr. Walter Williams. Correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, Dr. Williams. I think you were saying that the entire Nile Valley region, before it was, was Kemet, and then there was Abyssinian, and what is now Ethiopia. Is that where where the fault lies? Is what she's proposing?
Yes, because she got to understand that was all one land area, okay? And Abyssinia / Ethiopia was part of it, the Nile Valley civilization. Nubia, which is the Sudan today, is part of the Nile Valley civilization, and Egypt, okay? Egypt is the capital of, I call it the capital of the African Commonwealth, and under that umbrella of the ancient Egyptian African Commonwealth comes the countries of Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, all those countries that borders in the north of Africa along the Mediterranean. All that was part of the ancient Egyptian African Commonwealth. Okay, so when in the 18th and 19th century, the Europeans began to border those countries off and make them different and separate countries. So I disagree with her, which is okay, but she never did tell me the world's first and oldest civilization prior to ancient Egypt. Don't knock your ancient Egyptian ancestors, because that is where our greatness as a people is lying, over in the continent of Africa, unclaimed by its descendants who are walking around on planet Earth in the United States of America calling themselves Negroes, blacks, and African Americans. But our greatness is lying unclaimed over in ancient Egypt, over in Egypt. We have to claim that in order to get our greatness back. But I'm not going to argue with her, because she's got her mind made up. So maybe one day she realized that, hey, and I need to expand my thinking on this subject.
All right. 14 away from the top of the hour. 800-450-7876. Go to line 3. Charles is calling us from Washington, D.C. Charles, a question or comment for Dr. Walter Williams?
Good morning, Dr. Williams.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Carl. I'm trying to find out, since you say the Bible's a lie, what did the ancient Egyptians? We know that they had some kind of creator created plans in the universe. What god did they worship back then?
Well, you see, they had let me tell you, the most powerful gods and goddesses. I call it the ancient Egyptian African divine triad that consists of Osiris or Asa, Isis or Aset, and Haru, Horus, the sun, the S-U-N. Osiris is God and Father. Isis is goddess and mother. And Haru is the son of S-U-N of Osiris and Isis. Okay? So that is the main dominant gods and goddesses of ancient Egypt. So that.
One last question. I've been seeing this. You're the Geographic, right? National Geographic. And why they keep throwing about the UFOs connected with the Egyptians? Because they show the hieroglyphics like he's operating some kind of starship. What's up with that? Because I don't get this. Why are they throwing about this UFO thing with the Egyptians?
They're trying to do what to the Egyptians?
You know, like the UFO, like they're talking about on the hieroglyphics, like the hieroglyphics, like they look like they're operating some kind of spacecraft. They're showing on the NASA. What's up with this UFO link with the Egyptians? This is what I'm trying to find. Is this some kind of lie or myth?
Well, see, it's coming from Western academia. Western academia is trying to prove something by way of keeping the myth of the UFO, the mystery of the UFO, and their lack of understanding about the hieroglyphics, those pictorial symbols that our ancestors drew in Egypt. Okay, those symbols has never been deciphered. They can never ever be deciphered because the European has used all kinds of methods to decipher them. So I would say that is a European trick. Don't fall for it. And the National Geographics, that's horrible. But anyway, don't fall for it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Charles. Dr. Williams, so if we invented all this stuff, and you says there was no religion back in Kemet, so how do we process things? Who did we pray to, or what did we pray to? Because we've had one person come on here say we pray to all kind of different gods, the sun god for one, and animals. Is there any truth to that?
Well, today it is, yes. People of today are doing that. You asked me about what back in antiquity, what did our ancestors, who did they worship, et cetera, et cetera. Well, like I said before, they practiced what is known as the underlying principles of Ma'at, truth, justice, peace, love, and wisdom. That was the foundation of their civilization, the foundation of their institutions. So now, in between, like I mentioned to this last caller, they had a triad, an ancient African Egyptian triad of Osiris, Asa, Isis, Aset, and their son, Haru, Horus. That was the main deities of the ancient Egyptian coming out of that culture. So today...
Yeah, let me interrupt you here. You said Haru. Is Haru the person that Jesus the Christ is patterned off?
Correct. Absolutely correct.
And ISIS would be Mary then?
That's correct. See, and I'll take you back into the council meetings, and I can show you by way of an individual. Maybe next time I come on, you have me as a guest. Before I come on, you announce that all listeners should have a paper, a blank piece of paper, and a pencil, and I'll knock it and break it all down for the listening audience and as well as yourself, Carl, how that was done.
So at what point did they decide to use those names that we just mentioned and put them into the Bible and use them as the Bible? Which council meeting was that?
None. See, there was no Bibles back then. In my books, Historical Origin of Christianity and Historical Origin of Islam, I'm giving you the historical progression of how the things that are out here today how it was first created. Okay, these various council meetings. I'll walk you through the Council of Nicaea 1-325, the Council of Constantinople 1-381, the Council of Ephesus. And at the Council of Ephesus, this is where they created the created creature called the Virgin Mary. And at the Council of Ephesus, also they took Serapis and amalgamated Serapis with this created creature, the Virgin Mary, and they came out with the Christos. Speaking Greek, Christos, and in English, it's Christ. So I'll walk you through that council meeting, and then I'll walk you through the fourth council meeting, the Council of Chalcedon 451, and then I'll take you up into the fifth council meeting of 553, the Council of Constantinople 2.
All right, hold that thought right there. I'll let you do that. Finish that on the response on the other side. 8 away from the top of the hour. 800-450-7876 to speak to Dr. Walter Williams. Your call's next on 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Talk radio in the AM. Carl Nelson on 1450 WOL.
And thank you for staying with us. We're running out of time. Don't have much time left, but I got to remind you, Monday, Dr. Claude Anderson, the man with the plan, will be here. Dr. Walter Williams, tell us again the title of your books and how can folks reach you?
Okay, the title of my books is, the first one is called The Historical Origin of Christianity. The thesis of the book is saying that there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form of any race, creed, or color by the name of Jesus Christ. That book has been out for going on 23 years now. My second book has been out for 12 years, going on 13 years. It's called The Historical Origin of Islam. The continuation of the historical origin of Christianity is continued in the Islam book until Islam comes into being at a certain historical time era in the world, and it's listed and documented in my book, The Historical Origin of Islam. Now, you can reach me by sending me an email at ancientegyptian@msn.com. Repeat, ancientegyptian@msn.com, and put your phone number there, and whatever message that you want to convey to me, I'll get back to you via the telephone, and we can go from there.
All right. Thanks, Doc. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Carl.
All right, folks, we got to get out of here real quickly. We have a traffic report coming next for listeners in the DMV, but we want you to stay strong, stay positive. Always, always stay in the light. We'll see you Monday, 6 o'clock, right here on 1450 WOL, where information is power.